shit.
During my previous review for the Phantasm franchise, I talked about my gripes with what is commonly the most well-loved installment. So how about we flip that and talk about the sequel that most people claim is one of the worst of the franchise. Don Coscarelli got more creative control with this sequel, and brought back the original cast along with some new characters. This is my review of Phantasm III, Lord of the Dead. The movie begins with the customary recap of the previous films given to us by A. Michael Baldwin, returning as Mike. Already we're a step ahead here by my standards. In the process, we also learn the secret of the tall man's invincibility. This is what I picture every time a Kardashian gets some work done. And just like in the ending of Phantasm II, Reggie, played as always by Reggie Bannister, gets dumped on the side of the road, but he's not dead yet. But Liz and Mike might be. Phew, it's just Liz. That's just Coscarelli's version of a middle finger to Universal, or at least that's what I like to imagine. Reggie threatens to blow all of them to oblivion. See what I did there? But the tall man, played by the late Angus Scrimm, doesn't seem to be in the mood to play Mr. Potato Head in order to get Mike. So Reggie is able to get Mike to a hospital to patch him up. Patch up what? I don't know. Because for someone thrown several feet from a Michael Bay hearse, he's remarkably intact and unsinged. Strike the pose. That's a hell of a fidget toy, I'll give you that. Apparently, while in this coma, Mike isn't doing too well, as he's getting the Carol Ann treatment. On the bright side, he's able to reunite with Jody, played by Bill Thornbury, who tells him not to go towards the light. Probably a wise idea given who's waiting for him. Ow! Staying here is much worse! Oh yeah, we're back in the Phantasm universe. Reggie and Mike waste no time in leaving the hospital and getting ready to get back on the road. Before they can get back in the CUDA, Jody arrives to warn them that the tall man has been made aware of Mike's new state of consciousness. Hey, Jody, I appreciate you coming back from the dead and all to give us this heads up, but I think we were already functioning under that assumption. Even better, the tall man was able to track them down a lot easier using Jody. And that's because Jody is a sphere. Neither Reggie with his quad shotgun, nor Jody's flying ball of death self can prevent the tall man from kidnapping Mike. The following day, despite being charred, Jody is able to convey to Reggie that he needs to head for a place called Holtzville. Upon arriving there, it's painfully obvious that this is a place that the tall man has already been to. Though it's damn near devoid of life, there are still a few things to worry about. These scavengers are Rufus, Henry, and Edna, played by Brooks Gardner, the late John Davis Chandler, and Cindy Amboul. To add insult to injury, they steal the CUDA after stuffing Reggie in the trunk. I presume they also stole that hearse from Barbie's funeral home. Not a toy line that ran for very long. Came with a do-it-yourself embalming kit, so that was unique. They arrive at a house they plan to loot, thinking it'll be easy. Turns out the resident is Kevin McAllister if he were from The Brood.
It's just a kid.
Unlike a Home Alone movie, however, Tim dispatches all three of them pretty quickly, and even helps Reggie get out of the trunk of his own car. Tim explains a bit about what happened to the town and his backstory. The following morning, they discover a mildly concerning lack of scavengers. Can't stick around here though, so Reggie intends to drop Tim off at a nearby orphanage, but Tim has other plans. The Holtzville Cemetery provides Reggie with a ball of death and a couple more surprises, this being Rocky and Tanisha, played by Gloria, Lynne Henry, and Sarah Scott Davis. Now that we've said hello, say goodbye to Tanisha. Surprisingly enough, it's Tim who saves the day. Reggie and Tim leave Holtzville following the directions of Jody and pick up Rocky along the way. They fill her in on what they know about the tall man and figure out that the next logical place to look would be Bolton. But before that, it's time to get some rest. Or in Reggie's case, some vagine. Rocky ain't having it though, and doesn't hesitate to handcuff Reggie's ass to the headboard. As she should. The next day, they follow a handful of hearses, which turns out to be both a good and bad idea. But they get away from the gravediggers unscathed. That night, while Reggie is in the middle of a wet dream, Jody pulls some Jedi mind tricks in order to get them to where Mike is being held captive. With Jody's help, Mike and Reggie are able to escape the tall man, though the group does have to contend with his severed mutant hands. New fear unlocked. Thank you very much. Well, now that that crisis is over, it's time to deal with the worst undying group since Falling in Reverse. Good news, the scavengers are not impervious to their hearse flying several yards through the air before exploding. Reggie, Mike, Tim, and Rocky seek shelter in a nearby mausoleum, because where better to hide from your enemy than right under their nose?
Be the ball.
Once again using those handy Jedi mind powers, Jody shows Mike how the tall man creates both his killer spheres and his murderous Jawas. All this in order to achieve domination of worlds. Meanwhile,
Just wanted a taste.
so this would be the exact opposite of his wet dream, right? No input needed from the questionably kinky side of the audience.
Welcome home, boy.
Well, all the shit is just collectively hitting the fan, isn't it? Rocky, Reggie, and Tim fight Rufus, Edna, and Henry. They even get a little help from Jody. And now it's time to save Mike by means of utilizing something he'd mentioned before about the tall man and the cold. This does have some unexpected consequences though. And speaking of unexpected, and with this, Mike said, "Gotta live my Luke Skywalker being mentored by Yoda dream, guys."
Seeing is easy. Understanding, well, takes a little more time.
How Buddhist of you. With the promise that this isn't the last Reggie's heard of Jody or Mike, they wander off into the night. Rocky is also done with this whole tall man business and bids farewell to Reggie and Tim. Now, we're all familiar with how these movies end by this point, right?
It's never over.
And with that, the credits roll. We got the gang back together again. I really do see the return of the original cast as a big reason why I like this film so much. Again, no shade to James LaGrosse. I just strongly prefer A. Michael Baldwin as Mike. And we get more depth into Mike's character and his connection to the tall man here. In addition to this, we have some new and enjoyable characters. Rocky is always a favorite, and Tim is a pretty badass kid. The looters are quite entertaining before and after the zombification treatment too. Everyone's acting feels more fluid compared to the other two films. The returning actors have had a chance to hone their skills a bit and bring that to their characters. Everyone bounces off each other rather well. Something I can appreciate here is the practical effects. Nothing comes across as cheesy or painfully obvious either. The zombie looters look great, the kills are creative, and the wounds, mustard or not, look believable enough. Of the many things that you can say about this film, boring is not one of them. Granted, this may not be a great thing for some, but I enjoyed the plentiful action moments. I've heard some complaints about the comedy thrown into this sequel, and all I can say to that is humor is not a foreign concept to this franchise. Oh, and
Fuck y'all.
as I've stated in my previous reviews, if you want logic and a clear understanding of lore, you're in the wrong franchise. If you go into this the same way you would a roller coaster, you're likely to have a good time. If not, I'll admit that despite what I've said, there are some rough bits in the acting here and there. It's not perfect, but hey, it's practically B-horror. And who can't find some enjoyment in that with or without good acting? It's not a standalone film. Yeah, no duh, it's a sequel. What I mean is that if you haven't seen at least the first Phantasm, you'll be lost. If you haven't seen Phantasm II, you'll be even more lost. It isn't self-contained by any means, and there are a plethora of loose ends. With all that being said, I'm giving Phantasm III Lord of the Dead 8 out of 10 bloody thumbs up. I can't say for certain if this would be considered a positive or a negative, but something that I like about this franchise is things aren't always explained. You're left to fill in the blanks and piece things together, like an oddly shaped puzzle. Cool for some, frustrating for others. The film knows what it is and leans into it instead of trying to be something bigger than it is, or overselling itself. I have to give a tremendous amount of credit to Don Coscarelli, because he went from a no-budget film to a studio-funded sequel, to essentially being thrown aside by said studio, and never once allowed that to stop him from making the movie he wanted to make. Lord of the Dead has just the right flavor of chaos and characters that I can vibe with. There's something endearing and even charming about it that made me pick it as my favorite. I would recommend Phantasm III Lord of the Dead to B-80s horror movie fans, people who like comedy and action in their horror movies, Phantasm enthusiasts, fans of the first and or second Phantasm, and anyone who would like to see what could have happened if Home Alone had balls. See you later. If you're looking for more Phantasm, then check out my reviews of the rest of the franchise. Thank you to my patrons Michael Musale, Bronson Wright Wolf, Diana Moe, Sean Sheridan, Raiders AK, Angel X Minx 88, and Tyler Adams for supporting the channel.